Hi, everyone.
Your name.
Thank you for having us. I'm Katie Fehrenbacher. I'm a journalist who's been covering energy and transportation and clean tech in Silicon Valley for over a decade. Last year I joined GreenBiz. If you don't know it, it's a media and events company focused on sustainability and technology. And I'm really excited to interview these folks here today. I know we're all here to listen to the startup pitches that are coming after, but we thought it was equally important to talk with some of the leaders about energy innovation at big companies and hear some of their lessons learned about working with startups and trying to build innovation in their companies. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves real quickly, and then we're going to jump into a discussion about energy and innovation and how to work closely with startups and build new technologies. So Martin, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning from my view. And first of all, you see on the picture, I'm not Bradley. So Brad is here, sitting here. But Brad has a really nice picture today. So good morning from my view, and thanks for attending into this panel. First of all, I have to introduce myself a little bit, and I'm CFO of a company, of a utility in Austria, and we are one of the largest energy companies in Austria, and we focus on the whole value chain from generating, distributing, trading to sales in the gas, electricity, and also district heating sector. And therefore, with many changes in the next years and decades, of course, we have a very unique position as Austrians in this case, because we already cover our electricity supply by more than 75% of renewables. So we have to focus to reduce CO2 emissions in the sector of district heating, and of course in the sector of mobility. And therefore we thought several months ago that we will join Plug and Play and cooperate to find new technologies. And I think this was a very good start in our cooperation. I think there were some success factors for that, and we will discuss this in future.
Sure, thanks. Sean, why don't you go ahead?
Good morning. My name is Sean Bihonek. That's how you say that. And Bihonek. And I work for Phillips 66. I'm in a unique position that we're trying to start up a digital ventures group. So I kind of straddle between IT and the business in a new group for digital capabilities. And my job is to do a couple of things: work on the strategy, work on how the integration for those two teams will be, and then also look for new opportunities. Phillips 66 is about 15,000 strong, and most of that is in the refining sector. But I like to call us an energy logistics company because one, it sounds better. Two is that it is really what we want to be. So it's more about moving energy, whatever that is, be it oil and gas, be it biofuels, be it whatever. And I think that's the position we want to be in. So we're just getting started. A business got ahead of us a little bit and went out and did some ventures on their own. And so we're trying to gather forces and make that more constructive, in that we believe that innovation is a good way to, one, create a defensive posture. We are challenged every day with new technologies from our regulators and our competitors, and then also we believe that it's what we need to position ourselves for growth in the future. So look forward to talking to you all about your opportunities that you have for us, and we're trying to stand up a vetting process as we speak.
Thanks, Hattie. And Martin, I'm happy to license my picture.
No, it got fixed on the fly.
Changed it, okay. Good morning, everyone. Bradley Andrews, I'm president of digital for Worley. Worley is 3 weeks old. It's a merger of two companies, Worley Parsons and Jacobs ECR division. So as of 2.5 weeks ago, 60,000 people in 50 countries. We work across oil and gas, downstream chemicals, new energy, and mining. My role in the company is twofold. One, I'm in charge of the digital automation and innovation strategy for Worley internally. So that's where we're looking for technology and how do we improve ourselves as a company? How do we improve our services to our customers? But 3 years ago, we spun out a data science software and technology company that I lead that as well. So we're also a developer of technology. We're an investor in technology, and we work directly to the market. So I have a pretty cool job. I'm unique. I get to work on the internal transformation of a company, but I also get to work with, the top 50 oil and gas and mining companies in the world as they go through their digital transformation. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks, Heidi.
Excellent. So I think it would be helpful for the audience to learn more about how your companies see innovation, because clearly it's vastly different for a lot of big companies, from creating venture arms, external labs, working with plug and play. Martin, you're in a unique case where, your company is in Austria and you have a unique ecosystem around that. And you've been pretty aggressive working with plug and play. So why don't you tell us about that strategy?
Yeah, how should I start? I think there are some success factors in cooperating with plug and play and also with startups. I think the first success factor in a company like us in a very traditional conservative utility sector is that there is a full commitment of the board. And my colleague Christian Boer is attending here, and I think this full commitment of the management board, of the executive board, is one of the main issues to start this topic.
Yeah,
so,
and where you're at right now is you joined Plug and Play in February, and you're already working with 4 or 5 startups that are piloting in your region.
Yeah, and so we decided to cooperate with Plug and Play to also look on a worldwide view on developments in the different innovation sectors, not only in the energy and sustainability sector, because as utility there is a huge transformation, and we also have to focus on IoT topics and mobility topics. And so we found 4 companies at the moment. We are cooperating with them. One is an Australian one is an European one. So the main advantage in this cooperation is that we have a view over the world where innovation and technology will develop in the future. And the next step is to also implement these technologies in our company. So you have to persuade the management board that they have to see the advantages when they cooperate with startups, that it's not only an issue for changing their mindset, it's also a change in their business model, in their business processes, to increase turnover, to increase profit, and also to decline our costs, of course.
Yeah. Sean, Phillips 66 is kind of at an earlier stage in that development, and how does your company see the role of innovation in terms of the business?
We think it is a growth opportunity. As you know, the world is changing, sustainability, electric cars, all of those things. So we want to get on board with that as well and see how we might reuse the huge assets that we have. One of the barriers into oil and gas is the big capital investment that you have to do, much like a winery around here. You have to make a large investment, so we think that's a barrier to entry. But at the same time, we have a number of assets that we hope and we think that could be reused for other things. And just to give you one example is, we have 55,000 miles of pipeline. And what else could we use those for? We could use them for telecom backhauls or power or something like that. So, what else could we use our assets for the change in the near future? Our business, like I said, I think is chomping at the bit. They're reading and hearing and learning just like everyone else, and so they want a vehicle to vet these ideas and see how we can get some garnered investment dollars to that end. So they're very excited. We've stood up late last year. We ran a month-long session for refining, for example, and brought in a whole bunch of companies just to do their pitches and to see which ones would apply. I guess my advice would be mostly to try to fit into the business models that we have. Sometimes that's more difficult for startups to understand what we do and how it would apply. But I think for companies that are just getting their feet in the water, that's a very important part, that they really do need to be in line with the business models that we are trying to accelerate, if you will.
Yeah, Brad, you've talked a lot about, you and I, about how startups are, working with startups is a lot of times about changing the way the company works or changing new practices and sometimes less about the technology. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, I think we would look at innovation as you have to innovate everything in the environment around the technology. Rarely do I see the technology itself being the solution. In a lot of cases, in physical technology and robotics, but all the time in digital, no value is generated until something happens in the physical world. That means someone has to do something different than they did yesterday. And so this kind of confidence that has to build up as we work with startups to go, okay, at the very end, one of my workers is going to do something different and it's going to help me reduce cost or reduce risk or increase productivity. And helping them understand what that business case looks like. And so that means, innovative commercial models or innovative ways of working or knowledge management. Everything we put around a technology to make it enabled to be successful. So we spend a lot of time. In my team, I have ex-startup people, so they can speak that. I love when startups have advisors that come from the corporate world because it's really trying to understand where those two things overlap.
When you look back at your history of working with startups, is there kind of instances where you can remember where it didn't work out and why? What was the lesson learned there?
I always like to use personal examples where I failed because they're just fun and I like to remember. But I was running this big project once, a multi-million dollar, $100 million project. And we worked with a startup to put a new project control system in. I was the project director. And about 3 months in, I kept getting the reports. I paid the money. We put the system in. I kept getting the reports in the old system. So as a project director, I said, I demand next month that the reports come from the new system. And sure enough, I did. But I was walking the floor, and what I saw was my team was using the old system and then transferring the information to the new system just to give me a report with absolute failure in leadership. And so I started digging into it. And it turns out when I started asking questions is that the new system was really nice for me. Dashboards, I could dig into anything I want, but it caused everybody in the project more work. So I'd made 2 people's lives easier and 2,000 people's lives harder. Failure again. And so understanding that use case. And then finally, this was probably the biggest one, and this is a learning for me, but as you're doing a startup or anything, this is a thing to think about, is, I said, well, you're going to have information at your fingertips. This should be value to you. And the project said, simply, Brad, you finding out what's happening in my project every second, every day, and then using it against us drives the wrong behavior. So these are just examples of my poor leadership at the time. But the startup was damaged through that whole process because of my inability to enable and get adoption and lead properly. And so some of the times when we're in the startup, and I've been on that side, where you're going, this is my technology, it's great, but just constantly, empathetically put yourself in the person that's got to live with this every day. That's one way to make sure that you're not overlooking some of these critical aspects.
Martin and Sean, do you have any lessons learned of working with startups?
So I think one main lessons learned is that many startups think that their idea creates value, but the value is created on the market, and there is a huge difference in that. Yeah? So we have to persuade our clients, our customers, our B2B clients that we will create value for them. So the technology and the idea is the first step, but the creation of value is the main focus of corporates, and so this is a focus which I think sometimes is not very implemented by someone. I think this market view is one of the main issues. The second issue also Bradley met, because we have to transform our cultures in the companies because we have to implement these technologies. This will lead to a change in our business processes. This will lead towards less employees in some sectors and increase employees in other sectors. And this transformation is is not only technology driven, it's a people's business, and this people business has to create also new culture. And I think this is the main issue. If you forget to implement technologies together with also a change in mindset and culture, you will fail.
We had one here just recently that we're struggling through. So Philips is also a huge trading company. We have about 500 traders. And we went with a startup, and this is not, and one big thing is it's not always your fault. You know, most times it's the company's fault. And because of the timing of it and how long it took, there were much turnover within the organization. You know how traders are, they come and they go. And so to stay focused on that, to stay connected with the customer as they went through that delivery of a scheduling system for the traders so they would know where their product is when, is quite onerous. And I guess I would just tell you to be persistent, be very, very communicative with the whole the business that you're working with. Embed yourself as quickly and as emphatically as possible. It's real easy to say, I have a SaaS opportunity for you, and sitting back here in lovely California and not knowing what's going on in our business. And pretty soon you get less and less involved, and pretty soon there's a problem. So I guess I would encourage you to stay very integrated with whatever connection you make within a company. Stay very connected to the business, and make sure you're meeting those needs. So, and they change. They change all the time. Depends on who you are working with that day on whether you could be successful. So, be persistent, be highly communicative, and embed yourself in the organization.
What about success stories? Does anyone have an instance where they want to share about how a startup really created a lot of value for their company?
One that comes to mind for us is we invested in a startup that came out of the pharmaceutical. It was data science. It was predicting pharmaceutical field trials. I love getting technology from a different industry and applying it to ours. And we aimed it at our safety data, and aimed it at 10 years of Worley. We used ourselves as an experimental ground, and we're able to create an algorithms and machine learning that actually predicts in our projects when and where high potential safety incidents are going to occur. Things where you have 5 or 6 conspiring factors that all come together at one time. Human beings and our management controls aren't very good at those things. Machine learning is exceptional at that. And from that, we tested it out within Worley, and now, we're selling it now, piloting it with 3 of the top 4 tier 1 oil and gas companies in the world. So start up from a different industry, tried it on ourselves, and then externalize it again would be one that we're pretty excited about.
Yeah. How do you work with investors? I know there's a bunch of investors in the room from Sand Hill Road. How do they play a role in terms of innovation for your company?
So we are investors have for us different roles, of course. Macquarie is one of our shareholders, and they're focusing on developing our company, as well as the region of Styria. This is the one side of the investors, but if we think about the startups, we also have to find companies and venture capitalists which also take higher risks than a typical utility can do that. So I think this is a main issue to find these cooperations with venture capitalists to also create more value. I wanted to add some success story. We built up a joint venture several years ago together with an online bank. It's the largest online bank in Austria, and I think it's really a great success story because we now are cross-selling bank products with electricity and gas in a fully opened energy market. And we had the possibility that we increased the number of our clients about 20% in the last 2 years. So I think this cross-sectoral view, this not only looking on your sector, also looking at the developments in other sectors is essential for developing the companies in this traditional business.
One of the things I look for investors to work with us is the ability to work with us as a strategic. Some straight VCs would view us as problematic, and we would view them as problematic. So knowing what our role as a strategic, what their role as a pure VC is, I have great joint venture companies that are pure VCs, and then we've had less than fun experiences. So I think it's just understanding the drivers and what people want to get out of it, but knowing that you're trying to do something together is important. But it's that cultural fit's critical.
I was just going to say the same thing. I think being like-minded is very important. We were just sharing one bridge is a joint venture opportunity that we're trying to expose to others to join as well. So Philip started it, and basically what it was we had a huge data capture around the midstream business, and we wanted to increase sustainability for that. And so we basically turned over this huge data set so that the industry could work more safely and have an opportunity to raise the bar, if you will, for the whole industry. And so if you don't go into that joint venture or that investment with that mindset, you're very likely to wonder why Phillips did that, or what's in it for me. Or so it's very important that you have common goals and that you're working towards those. And it's a give and take. It really is. So it's not go in. I think you won't have the continued growth with investors if you go in there just selfishly.
What's the local innovation ecosystem like in Houston in the oil and gas sector? Is there a growing space there?
Nascent, but growing. Houston's got a lot of things going for it. Rice is there. It's a massive economy, but a lot of that money and thought leadership left. And I think it was the problem with our industry. The oil and gas industry is, as Sean said earlier, high barriers of entry. A startup has really no chance of selling directly to an oil company until we started to build these up. So I think Houston's got, I know Plug and Play and Wade and others are working with the community and the mayors there. And I think it's, I think Houston wants it now. I think Houston can be a fantastic city for it. And if I take even broader Texas, what we have in Dallas and what we have in Austin, kind of different but complementary, we're pretty bullish on where Houston can go, and I think the timing is right.
What about in Austria, in Styria? I had to Google Styria as part of Austria, but yeah.
So when you look to Austria, we are the gate to the CE countries, to the Central Eastern European countries, and there are huge potentials there. And there are many engineers and technologies in there, and we have to find them and to develop this European market. So Austria has a very special situation in this case because from the history we are the hub to these countries, and therefore we have the potential to increase our next incubator as we implemented in the last years. We see several developments. Also, Plug and Play is interested in Austria because of this development in this region, which is very interested. Also, the Chinese guys look on this sector very intensively, and they're investing in infrastructure from the Greek harbors to the roads through the CE countries. So we also have to focus to get this knowledge and the competences from this region to the Western European Union. And I think this is a main issue and advantage of Styria and also of Austria, of course, because we have this long-time relationships to these countries and to the guys, and we can focus on that. And they are interested to come to Austria to find a small test market for the rest of the European Union. So many international companies come to Austria and test their products and technologies in a very open market in Austria, and then to go to Germany, to France, to other regions in Western Europe. And I think this is one of the main advantages of Austria, that we are in the heart of Europe and we have a small market, but we are interested for a test market for future technologies. And therefore also these CE countries come to Austria that we can gather that, and I think they're very hungry for developments and to create values for the future.
And it has an interesting regulatory market for energy, right? And you have a interesting history in the regulatory market, don't you?
So yeah, I was on the bad side of the energy sector. I was regulator. as I was regulator, it was the good side, of course. Huh? I was 20 years with the regulatory authority, and so I had the possibility also to develop the European framework and directives to open the market. And there is a huge difference between the energy markets in Europe and in the US. In Austria, you can switch your supplier since 2001. So there's no possibility for a household in California to do that yet. So there is a market-driven development, which was the first step of this changes in the energy market. And now there's a technology-driven change because of many technologies, new electric vehicles, heating pumps, etc. PV is increasing, decentral generation is increasing. So there are many changes now, technology-driven, and so the regulator has to cover these issues, and hopefully they will do it. In the past, they made it excellent.
Are there technologies in particular that your companies are looking for?
Sure, lots of them. I also run a data analytics group too, and I think that is definitely the wave of the future, to have data-driven decisions. You know, for years and years we give them lots of data and they still make a gut decision. So it's finally coming to its own. I think that it's becoming more and more of a driver, not only just for making decisions, but actually driving the workflow itself. So having things with predictive nature in them, so predicting demand, forecasting demand, predicting scheduling, where best put the right product in the right place for the right price type thing. So that's it's very, very powerful. So we have a small team that's, well, it keeps splitting and growing, but we also are leveraged with University of Illinois, for example, to outsource some of that work to do the data science part. You get really cheap PhDs that way, so it's pretty lucrative. And then obviously anything around IoT, because we have tons and tons of big equipment. And our biggest issue, though, is telecom. So the midstream business is out in the middle of nowhere, as you know, and the refineries themselves are these huge complexes with lots and lots of equipment that interfere with Wi-Fi, and so we're looking for better ways of doing that. So you hand out, digital work orders for workers, and guess what? They have to go stand at a certain place to get it, even though they're within the facility. So those are some huge challenges we have around that, and just trying to make things integrate and move faster. We've made a big push around what we call the value chain. So it's everything from trading crude to get to our refineries, to manufacture the right product, and not just produce as much as they possibly can, which is has been their goal for lots of years, and then move it to our terminals and our pipelines through the midstream business, and then out to our customers. Most of our customers are not consumers, but other businesses. So your smaller shops like Circle K and these convenience stores. And we have a place in Texas called Buc-ee's. I don't know if you know that one, but it's all right. Yes, right. It's a wonderful place that you should visit. So those are Philips molecules there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that whole integration it takes quite a feat of people and technologies working together. So we had to even change a lot of our the way we incentivize our employees. No longer is it by sector, but for the whole value chain. That was a huge thing. We actually had to teach people what general interest was. Believe it or not, we had to have a definition and a video, and so to teach them. This is for the company and not just for each business unit themselves. So it's a combination of all those things. I think Brad said it's about technology implemented in the right way.
Very similar to Sean, our finance focus changes as our strategy changes. So we're always looking for tech for industry. Anything that gets the physical world sensed back to my predictive algorithm as fast and lowest latency and highest fidelity, always interested in. New energy tech. And then an emerging place for us is cyber protection. So not cybersecurity of the data, but cybersecurity of our customers' facilities. very emerging threat happening, and technology that's looking at that, we'd be really keen on learning about.
What's new energy tech from your point of view?
So anything around the distributed energy system, whether that's on the generation side, so wind or solar, through to the controllers, through to battery storage, that complete kind of packaging.
Martin, what is your company looking for?
Yeah, of course. We also have these issues in mind, and in our grids, the amount of PV panels and rooftop PV is increasing dramatically. So the grid was built in the 70s, 80s, and so we have to invest in our grid facilities for the next 40 years. So you also have to discuss the developments in different markets. If you look at the electric vehicle market, at the moment we all think that the EVs will be charged in our garage. Is this really the topic in the next 20 years? I don't know. But we now have to invest for this infrastructure to have the possibility to charge the EVs. So I think this is the main issue of our industry at the moment. Of course, at the last 3 days, so there was a scenario for blackout, and there was a testing for blackouts because of this distributed generation. The risk is increasing. Therefore, we have to build new facilities, new regulatory frameworks, and also, of course, new power plants. I think, on the other hand, we have to encourage our clients, and in the European level, there was built a new topic, or it was implemented now in a directive. It's called energy communities, so that several people connect together and are able to trade their electricity peer-to-peer. If this is coming, and it will be in our regulatory framework in the next several months, I think that will be a game changer for several issues, because at the end of the day, security of supply is one of the main economical values for society and also for our economy. And if everybody is able to do everything in the electricity market, we will have to cover new issues. We are not seeing the risk, of course, but we also see the challenges in this case, and the chances for utility to focus on security of supply and cybersecurity also for these devices, and to increase the possibilities of the clients to get an active player in the marketplace.
Innovation is clearly in your company moving the company more towards more sustainable energy options and cleaner options. But what about for you guys? Does innovation play a role in making the energy business more sustainable?
Yeah, we're facing the energy transition pressures and the digitization, and like everybody else. And we're coming from a carbon-intensive industry. 20 years ago, we would have had 20% of our people working in coal, and we have nobody working in coal. So it doesn't take long. So it has to be. Energy to us we're quite agnostic about where it comes from. That's what society needs. That's what we need to deliver. And if we're going to go from heavy carbon to light carbon to no carbon, we need to be not only along for the journey, we have to be thinking ahead and helping society get there. And innovation just it goes without saying, we're going to have to be innovative around how we're doing these things.
What about from Philips?
We have a R&D group that's about 350 PhDs and others that this is what they do all day. They sit around and they try to think of new ways for fuel cells, for different ways of managing the molecule, all of those types of things. So they're working on films. We were talking about it earlier. So instead of having solar panels on your house, these films go on your windows so that it's less intrusive, more available. I think the point of all of that is in doing all of those things, it still has to be commercially viable and it has to be cheap. And until that happens, everybody just keeps working at it. So that's the barrier is, I don't know about Austria, but in Texas, if I can get my electricity 2 cents cheaper, even though I'm giving up wind, I'm going to take it. So that's just the way that works. Mostly in the U.S. is it has to be efficient, effective, and cheap.
I know policy doesn't always play a role in the Silicon Valley discussions, except for sometimes in energy. But are there policies, maybe Martin, from your perspective, are there policies that would help make this transition easier?
At the moment in Europe, there is a starting discussion about a CO2 tax, and I think it would be one possibility to increase the focus on sustainability and renewables dramatically. I think it's not a possibility to set in force in one country CO2 tax. So it's a common topic for the European Union and, of course, for the whole world. So I think we have to find a fair price for CO2 emissions in future. At the moment in Europe, the prices are at 25 euros per ton. So if we want to phase out nuclear, we want to phase out coal, we want to phase out also gas-fired power plants, we have to find a way to increase the price for CO2 emissions in future, and therefore there is an issue at the European Union to implement a new policy. In this case, it's called climate and energy policy, and hopefully the new Commission, which will be elected in the end of this month, will focus on these topics.
Brad and Sean, what do you think? Houston oil and gas industry looking for a CO2 tax?
I'm from Alberta. We had a carbon tax, and then policies changed. I think, I'm not going to speak on behalf of policymakers. We went last year. We went and interviewed about 100 policymakers from around the world around technology, and what we're trying to get from them is, they're going to shift, and business needs certainty. And so, we're going to have where regimes are not going to be in carbon tax. They are going to have carbon tax. At the end of the day, the technology and the business cases are going to stack up. Whether you subsidize it or you tax it, that's just closing the gap. So I encourage governments just to try to be as forward-thinking, but let us know what's going to happen. And governments are going technology. They're like, you put it in, and then we'll figure out how to regulate you. The technology providers are going, well, we don't even know. Autonomous vehicles, perfect example. And then the investors are pricing that risk in. And these countervailing forces are actually hurting us. The other one I'd say is just these protectionist policies that are coming in because they think AI or machine learning is going to take people's jobs. It is actually countervailing to what we want to do as a society, and they should be putting their energy into retraining and educating versus ill-fated and not ill-conceived kind of policy to block progress. I'll get off my soapbox now.
I guess I would talk about not doing it by policy, but making it attractive. We have something called a RINs requirement, and basically that is it's a marketplace, which I think is prime for blockchain. By the way, anybody that wants to do that, I think I would buy it. What we have to do is we have a certain threshold to meet in terms of renewables, and so you get what you call these RINs credits, and you buy and sell and trade them in sort of a marketplace, and the way it's kept track of is by the government. And I just think it's a way of looking at things differently to make it attractive for people to swap out fuels rather than to tax them and make it a burden. In the oil field, there is a whole cottage industry around measuring CO2 gases. I mean, everything from understanding what equipment horsepower you have and how long it runs and all of that for thousands and thousands of wells, and we have to report that quarterly. And I mean, it's just a whole cottage industry around that. And I think it's just a huge burden that I think there's a better way to do it.
All right, we only have a minute and a half left, so I think the last thing I want to hear from you guys is a bit of advice for the startups and entrepreneurs in the audience. What is the best way to connect with you and work with your company?
Patience, resilience.
Be persistent.
Solve my problem and understand my business case. And if you do that, then you'll be on the right track.
don't give up. Don't think it's you. Most of the time it's us. So be very, very persistent. Be very communicative. State your case. State it in terms of use cases for us.
Yeah, look on our problems, solve them, and look on the market, how we can develop solutions for our clients in future.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for your lessons learned and honest discussion about innovation at your company. And just final plug for me, check out our stuff on GreenBiz. And we have an event at the end of the year called Verge. You should check it out. It's in October in Oakland on sustainability and technology. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thanks, Heidi.